A herb that's been used for digestive complaints for 3,000 years is now showing up in modern Crohn's research. But before you run to the health food store, let's talk about what the studies actually say and what your doctor needs to know. Hi, I'm Kate, and today we're talking about wormwood for Crohn's remission. And this matters right now because I'm seeing people online claiming it's a natural alternative to biologics. And I'm also seeing people dismiss it entirely because it sounds too alternative. And both of these positions miss what's actually interesting here. So here's where I'm coming from. As a naturopath, I've watched the research on wormwood develop over the last 15 years with genuine interest. There are studies. They're small, but they do exist. And as a mum whose son has Crohn's, I also know what it's like to read about something that might help and feel that pull, that hope, that maybe, just maybe, this could be the thing that makes a difference. My son didn't use wormwood in his journey to remission, but I've worked with clients who've done it, always alongside medical care. And what I've learned is this: it's not a magic bullet, and it's not a replacement for anything. But for some people in the right context, with proper supervision, it might be worth exploring. This key is knowing what you're actually dealing with. Not hype, not fear, just information. So let's reframe this because most of what you'll find online falls into two camps. In camp one, wormwood is a natural way to get off your meds and into remission without the side effects. That's dangerous. That's not what the research shows, and it sets people up for disappointment or worse, a flare. In camp two, herbs don't work for Crohn's. If it's not a pharmaceutical, it's nonsense. Well, that's dismissive. It ignores the fact that we do have some clinical data on wormwood, and it shuts down a conversation that actually could be useful. So, what's the sane middle path? Well, wormwood is a traditional herb with emerging research that suggests it may have anti inflammatory and gut modulating properties. It's not strong enough to replace medical treatment, but I might, and I stress might, offer supportive benefit for some people when used carefully and in partnership with their gastroenterologist. That's the conversation we're having today. Not wormwood versus medication, wormwood as a potential piece of a bigger puzzle used intelligently. Okay, let's get practical. Here's what you actually need to know about wormwood and Crohn's. So, what did the studies actually show? The most cited research comes from a 2007 German study published in Phytomedicine. 40 patients with Crohn's disease were already on steroids were split into two groups. One group got a wormwood extract alongside their steroid taper, the other got a placebo. By week 10, the wormwood group had better remission rates and were able to reduce their steroid dose more successfully than the placebo group. The researchers noted improvements in mood and quality of life as well, which isn't nothing when you've been dealing with a flare. Now, here's what the study does not say. It doesn't say wormwood works on its own. It doesn't say stop your medication. It says that when used alongside a steroid taper, wormwood appeared to support the process. There are a couple of smaller studies and traditional use data, but this is the big one people reference. It's a good study, but it's also small, and it's one study, and it hasn't been replicated at scale, and that matters. We need more research, but what we have is interesting enough to pay attention to. So, how is wormwood thought to work? Well, it contains bitter compounds. These compounds are thought to have anti-inflammatory effects and may influence gut immunity and microbiome balance. In traditional herbal medicine, wormwood has been used as a digestive bitter, something that stimulates digestive secretions and supports gut motility. For someone with Crohn's, that's relevant because inflammation often disrupts normal digestive function. But here's the thing though, we don't fully understand the mechanism yet. We've got theories, we have traditional use, we have one decent clinical trial, but we're not at the point where we can say exactly how it works or for whom it works best. But that's not a reason to dismiss it. It's a reason to approach it with respect, but also caution. So, what's the conversation you need to have with your doctor? Well, if you're thinking about trying it, this isn't a just try it and see situation. You need to loop in your gastroenterologist, and here's why. First, wormwood can interact with medications. If you're on steroids, immunosuppressants, or biologic, your doctor needs to know you're considering this. There's a theoretical risk of herb-drug interactions, and while we don't have strong data on this, it is better to be cautious. Second, if you're in a flare or your disease is active, wormwood is not a substitute for medical management. The study used it during a steroid taper in people who were already being treated. That is a very different context than trying to manage active disease with a herb. And third, your doctor needs to know so they can monitor you properly. If something changes, good or bad, they need the full picture to interpret what's happening. The conversation might sound like this. I've been reading about wormwood for Crohn's. There's a study from 2007 that showed some benefit during steroid tapering. I'm not looking to replace my treatment, but I'm curious if this might be something worth trying as a support. Can we talk about whether it makes sense in my situation? That's informed, that's collaborative, that's how you use herbs intelligently. So, what are some practical considerations if you do try it? Well, let's say your doctor is open to it, or you're working with a naturopath who's guiding you. Here's what you need to know. Dosage matters. The study used a specific extract at 750 milligrams 3 times a day. That's not the same as buying some random wormwood capsules online. You want a standardized extract and you want professional guidance on dosing. Quality matters. Not all herbal products are created equal. You want a reputable brand that does third-party testing. This isn't the time to go cheap. And duration matters. In the study, people used it for 10 weeks. It's not a long-term indefinite thing. You use it strategically for a specific purpose and you reassess. And side effects matters. Wormwood is generally well tolerated, but some people experience nausea, headaches, or digestive upset. If this happens, you stop. You do not push through it. One more thing. Wormwood contains a compound called thurgone, which in high doses can be neurotoxic. The amounts in therapeutic wormwood extracts are low and considered safe, but this is why you don't just wildcraft it or make your own tinctures without knowing what you're doing. Okay, what's the bigger picture? Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. It's wormwood. It's not a miracle. It's not a replacement for medical care, but it's also not nonsense. It's a traditional herb with some modern research backing that suggests it might offer some support in specific contexts. For someone who's tapering steroids and looking for every bit of help they can get, it might be worth exploring. For someone who's stable on a biologic and doing well, it isn't necessary. The point is, you make that decision with information, with professional guidance, and with your medical team in the loop. That's how you use natural medicine responsibly. So, where does this leave you? If you're curious about wormwood, you now know what the research actually says and what it doesn't say, and how to have a real conversation about it with your doctor or naturopath. You're not choosing between conventional and herbs, you're asking whether there's a place for both, used intelligently in your specific situation. And if the answer is no, if your doctor doesn't feel comfortable with it, or if it doesn't feel right for you, then that's okay too. There are lots of ways to support your gut and your remission. Wormwood is one option, but it's not the only one. What matters is that you're informed, you're thoughtful, and you're making decisions from a place of knowledge, not desperation. So, if this helped, share it with someone who needs it, especially if they've been hearing about wormwood and wondering if it's legit. And if you want more support navigating the intersection of natural medicine and Crohn's care, that's exactly what we do in my coaching and in the Crohn's Method community. You don't have to figure this out alone. I'll see you in the next video and have a beautiful day.